bringing attention to the destruction of the 3 World Trade Center towers in New York City on September 11th, 2001, and a whole lot more. This is 9/11 Freefall. Hi everybody, this is Andy Steele, and I'm happy to be back again for yet another episode. It is 2013, and we are almost done with the first month of the new year. And what a year it's been! And what a year it's going to be. Issues and events around the world are moving faster and faster, kind of like a clock gears whizzing around on their own. And, you know, in one sense, they kind of look like they're moving independently, but you know as you step back that they're also part of a bigger machine. That's what we're seeing take place in the world right now within our country, but also on the bigger picture. And there's so much happening, I can barely keep track of it on the news page that I webmaster, but at the start of all of it, at the center of all the varying controversies and crises we now face, is this event that took place 11 years ago. All right, this event that rattled us from our happy stupor, and initially it shocked the public into compliance with their government's will. And then it later divided a lot of us, many of us, all of us, against each other. And you know what's funny? Those people following right now current events, following tensions between China and Japan in the East China Sea, and analyzing the chances, you know, could they actually have an actual conflict breaking out over this between these two countries? You know, and they're essentially saying that such a conflict would quickly grow into a World War III scenario if it happened. And no doubt a conflict like that would involve our country, the United States. But the truth is that World War III has already started. It started on September 11th, 2001, folks. All right, that's the day that somebody gave the order to bring down the Twin Towers with Americans inside it, after rigging the buildings and Building 7 with explosives in what was obviously a plan to fool our public into giving up their liberties and turning their nation's might against the world. So, if you're tuning into this program for the first time, this program is about 9/11 science and 9/11 truth activism. And it's about the people out there informing the nation about the fact that our government is lying to us, and that the Twin Towers and World Trade Center Building 7 were brought down in a controlled demolition on September 11th. We feature people and groups in the middle of this ongoing fight, in particular architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. All right, AE 9/11 Truth is a non-profit organization happily out there rattling the cages of those people trying to keep the 9/11 natural collapse fairy tale alive. All right, it was founded in 2007 by Richard Gage, AIA, and has made several films, including its latest film, which is called 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out, which can be viewed on the internet. As well, AE 9/11 Truth is constantly involved in grassroots activism, fighting the real battle for freedom in America. And when I say real battle, no, I don't mean what you see in military propaganda rock videos with soldiers jumping out of helicopters at dawn and all the phony action movie stuff they use to get young men into joining the military. What I'm talking about, fighting the real battle for freedom, is the real things that protect freedom here in America, all right? That means telling the truth, you know, approaching others with it, even if it makes people uncomfortable, all right? Even if it makes people mad. All right, because, you know, deep down, their anger comes from the fact that they know that architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth is right. That they know that we as a nation are living a lie, and that individuals have a responsibility to do something about it. Now, at AE911truth.org, those people answering this call to do something about it are doing their part, and they can find a number of volunteer opportunities there, no matter what you're good at. And you can sign a petition that so many others already have, including over 1,700 verified architects and engineers, all of them calling for a real investigation into what brought down the Twin Towers and Building 7 on 9/11. All right, folks, you need to go to that page, and you need to double down your efforts and join this fight now more than ever. All right, the troubles of our current day are not going to go away if you just close your eyes and wish them away. All right, that's magical thinking. That doesn't work. That's what children do. All right, we're adults. We're strong people. We can do what we need to do. All right, the problems can go away, but we got to collectively get at the heart of their source, which again and again, and I say this again and again, is 9/11. All right, which is the lie of 9/11. In particular, the controlled demolition of the towers that we talk about every week here. All right, again, that's AE911truth.org. Go there. Go every day. Save it to your favorites on your computer and check it out. Show your friends. Pass it around. Tell others what they're doing there. Join that effort. Now, before we get to the next big bit of news here and our guest for this week, what we're going to do is what we do every week. We take about 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families and, of course, everyone who has been affected by the post-9/11 world. So we're going to take those 10 seconds of silence right now. Okay, and that's about 10 seconds. Now, folks, we remind you, this is not about money or business. This is about exposing the truth and getting justice for the victims of 9/11 and saving lives too. All right, you know, every time we talk about this, every time we wake people up to this issue, we lessen the chance of another 9/11 being perpetrated by the people who pulled off the first one. And we're going to keep going until all those people are exposed and in jail. All right, and along those lines, this week at AE911truth.org, we have an action alert there, and it's announcing that police chiefs and sheriffs across the United States have been alerted of the 9/11 controlled demolition evidence. All right, this fax went out on Wednesday, January 16th, and it went out to the majority of police chiefs and sheriffs in America. Over 12,000 people got this. Okay. And it's a letter from Richard Gage laying out a quick summary of the evidence for the controlled demolition of the Twin Towers in Building 7, and then directing them to a special web page that we prepared for law enforcement officials to view with the evidence listed there in greater detail. So it's all laid out for them. All right, so if you guys go to the action alert right there at AE911truth.org, which we're going to be posting at 911freefall.com too. There's a banner there in the action alert that links back to the law enforcement page I was just talking about. And on that page, there's a copy of the letter that the law enforcement officials received. And what we're imploring you to do is to put your own local police chief or your local sheriff's name at the top of it. It's an MS Word document. You can just type it right there. You print it out and you deliver it to them one way or another. Okay? You can either fax it to them, or if you can, please go there to their office and hand it to them. All right? Now, when you speak to them, obviously, you speak for yourself if you know what you want to say, but the action alert also provides you guidelines for what you can say if you don't know what to say or you get stage fright. We have some suggestions there of what you can tell your local police chief or sheriff. So if you're in their office and they're right in front of you, you can say, I'm a volunteer with Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and I came in because I care about our country, and I'm very concerned about the true nature of the crime that occurred on 9/11 at the World Trade Center. And you ask them, did you receive the fax letter from AE911 Truth on January 16th? Now, if they say no to you, then you can say, well, here's a copy. Or if they say they already got it, you can hand them a copy of it anyway. They'll have two of them. Good. And you ask them to please forward this important letter to the chief directly if you're not talking to the chief, because it summarizes the peer-reviewed scientific evidence that calls into question the official account of 9/11. So it's listed there in the action alert, but when you say it boldly. Say it like you mean it. All right, because you're on the side of law and order, and we'll get to that more in a minute, but you know the evidence. It's there. All right, you're reporting a crime. So you can say that to them, or you can call them on the phone, and you can say something very similar. You can say, I'm a volunteer with Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and I'm calling because I care about our country, and I'm very concerned about the true nature of the crime that occurred on 9/11 at the World Trade Center. And you ask them again if they received a fax, and if they didn't, you just ask them for the fax number and fax it right to them. And so you say the same thing, all right? You say, please forward this letter to the chief directly because it summarizes the peer-reviewed scientific evidence that calls into question the official account of 9/11. Remember, folks, you are reporting a crime. All right, and if the police are wary of investigating it because they think they might not have jurisdiction over this crime that happened in New York City, we cover that on the law enforcement website. And if you go to the law enforcement website, you'll see there it says, New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison found factual and legal justification to use the resources of his office to investigate the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. All right, because Jim Garrison, he was based there out of New Orleans, and Kennedy was killed in Dallas. All right, he was able to establish this under the principle of nexus of jurisdiction, according to which if any element of a crime was committed in a jurisdiction, law enforcement officials in the jurisdiction are entitled to investigate any and all aspects of the crime. Such elements of the crime could include phone calls made from your jurisdiction or participants in the attack traveling through your jurisdiction and discussing the plan for the crime while they are there. It could even include the transportation through your jurisdiction of materials or devices used as part of the crime. And then it also says, as well, please consider referring the following issues to the offices listed below. Then it goes on the page to list the government and New York City police agencies to which your local police chief can report various elements of the criminal cover-up, including the destruction of the evidence and the failure to follow normal investigative procedures by the officials in New York City as part of the cleanup of Ground Zero, as well as scientific fraud and obstruction of justice committed by NIST officials and contractors, and obstruction of justice committed by FBI agents or other federal investigators. Now, what's the purpose of doing this? All right, the federales stonewall and hide and cover up. Why reach out to local law enforcement? Well, folks, think about this. And as the Action Alert states, we're going to the roots of American justice here. All right, the enforcers of American justice. And I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again here, all right? We got to get past this mindset that we're somehow troublemakers or that people talking about controlled demolition on 9/11 are outcasts, all right? We're not. We're not, plain and simple, all right? We're actually the ones on the side of law and order here. And I want that to stick in your brain, because I think we lose sight of that. All right, we're not the ones who need to hide or who need to fear the police. All right, the federal government and the corporate media promote this police state on TV, and they put it in your head that the federal government owns the country and that they control anybody out there in a uniform. And it's done to chill you. I have no doubt it's done to chill you. All right, it's done to present this idea of inevitability and project this idea that they are in control of everything. Well, folks, you're listening to me right now. I'm telling you right now, I'm here to tell you that they are not in control of everything. You are. All right? You are in control. All right? You are the sleeping giant that the criminals are afraid of waking up, especially if you are in a position of being a law enforcement officer. All right? Think about this. If you're in a uniform, if you're a regular beat cop, or you're a police chief, or you've been elected to the sheriff, you are the one they are relying on to keep this incremental loss of liberty in progress. All right? But you are the one low enough on the ladder not to be in the federal government system, but high enough on the ladder to have a profound impact over the lives of the people in your jurisdiction. All right? And because of that second reality, you are actually more powerful than the phony puppets on TV reading teleprompters and getting their agendas handed to them by whatever special interest they sold their soul to in order to get there. So actually, on the ladder of reality, you're in the highest position of them all. All right, and here's an example, and I'm not going to get into the whole Second Amendment discussion here on this show, but it is an issue going on right now, and it highlights what I'm talking about. And I was looking the other day at a list of 20 sheriffs who are telling Barack Obama that he can stick it, and that they're not going to enforce any gun laws that he initiates. All right, now folks, doing that's real power. All right, that's power. No amount of red carpets or hail to the chief jingles. They can't copy that. That's the kind of power that people like Barack Obama and George Bush wish they had. All right, without the roots of American justice, the police, the sheriffs, these politicians are nothing. They're nothing. All right, they're the same as that guy who was running for office that I confronted, and when I asked him what specifically he in the science he disagreed with, the first thing that came out of his mouth was this weak, helpless, "Oh, please don't do this to me." That's really what we're up against. That's the wizard behind the curtain, folks. All right? I mean, without the local law enforcement, they have only the military, and if they use that to enforce their mandates, then their game is up, and the American people will see them for the tyrants they are, all of them. And I don't care. We got our ancestors were strong fighting people. America will wake up. All right, that would mark the beginning of their demise. So, look. You wake up your local police chief or sheriff to 9/11 controlled demolition evidence. You may be waking up somebody with the resources and who has credentials enough to investigate this crime and who might be the engine to blow this whole thing wide open. You don't know. All right? But at the very least, what you do is you plant a seed, and that seed might sprout later. All right? Maybe the perpetrators of 9/11 will do some other horrible act. Maybe they'll blow up another building. All right, don't you want the sheriff and the police chief overlooking that crime to know about the 9/11 evidence before that happens? Don't you want this in their heads? Don't you want them to look at it maybe with a more critical eye because they know that 9/11 was a big lie in itself and this new event, whatever it ends up being, resembles that? All right, don't you want them to know what's really going on here in America? And folks, the reason you need to answer this action later, the reason that you need to go speak to your local police chief or sheriff is you need to get them on our side now so that they can be on our side later. And if you're a police chief out there, or you're a sheriff, or you're just a regular officer listening to this broadcast, maybe you got the letter. You're starting to investigate this for yourself, and you found this program in your web searches. We need you in this fight. At the very least, to be informed. All right, we're not doing this because it's fun or because we have an America-hating agenda. Quite the opposite. This is about defending America because we believe in it. All right, the towers were really blown up with explosives, and we were all lied to as Americans. All right, we would not be taking this time and effort to get your attention and present this evidence to you if it were not real. Richard Gage, the other people at AE 9/11 Truth are all reasonable people. We just need you to look at the evidence with a critical eye. That's all we're asking. That brings us to our guests for the week. On the law enforcement webpage, there's a video of retired California Highway Patrol Officer John Meaders, who introduces visitors to the evidence. It's amazing because the view count on that video went up at a very progressive and fast rate. So we're very happy about that in terms of the number of people that are seeing it and visiting the page. Well, he's our guest today. Now, John, a little about John. He graduated from the California State University, Los Angeles, with a degree in criminal justice and a GPA of 3.88. That's pretty good. And he made the dean's list while he was there. And he served in the U.S. military in the 87th Maintenance Battalion as a missile system repairman. He got a citation and a Medal of Valor in 1990, presented by Governor George Dukimijan. I hope I pronounced that right. And in 2007, he was promoted to sergeant and given the Officer of the Year award and has been awarded several other awards throughout his career. John Meaders, welcome to 9/11 Freefall.
Thank you very much, Andy.
Now, John, we always ask our guests this. Tell us how you came awake to the 9/11 truth evidence and what prompted you to start speaking out about it.
Well, first let me correct you on pronunciation of George Dukimijan's name. He was the governor of California one time.
Dukimijan, okay, yes. Thank you.
Well, I got involved probably listening to talk radio. In particular, it was a show called Coast to Coast, and I heard Alex Jones talking about how the towers came down. And so at first I was very skeptical, and then I decided to do some research of my own. So I researched some of it, and after a while it started to have a lot of holes in the official story. And I'm saying, wait a minute, now they're not addressing this one building, Building 7, which was not hit by a plane. So anyway, Alex Jones was going to have a big conference in Chicago. I think that was 2006. The conference was in Chicago. And I just went to the conference. My wife and I went to the conference to hear speakers talk about 9/11 and some of the anomalies and some of the problems with the official story. And so at that time, I was a police officer for approximately, 2005, about 15 years. And for me, it just hit home. It resonated with me that there's too many problems in this story, this official story, for it to be a concrete, slam dunk case that it happened the way they said it happened. So it was the anomalies, the problems, Building 7, the steel melting at a certain temperature, and here we have hydrocarbon fuel, which is just diesel, burning at a temperature that's much less that cannot melt steel. That all bothered me. It was like I've seen so many car fires in my career. I'm a California Highway Patrol officer at the time, and you go through a lot of car fires, and I've never seen a car completely burned to the ground where I don't see the steel frame. I mean, I've seen cars burn for an hour, and still, I would still see the steel sitting out there looking like a car. And I'm saying, well, the building should have been the same. So that's how, it probably a little more involved in that, but it really upset me once I woke up about that there's problems with the official story and the story.
Yeah, it is upsetting, and I remember that feeling of not being able to immediately dismiss something like this as I was on other things, and you go down that rabbit hole, and that's how everybody wakes up, I think. Now, you said you were a police officer when you woke up to this still. You hadn't retired yet. When you were a police officer, did you start talking about it immediately, and what was the reaction of your colleagues when you started coming out about this evidence?
That bothered me a whole lot. No, I did not start talking about it immediately. I wanted to make sure I had all my ducks in order. I researched it, day and night. I would read books. Griffin, I know you know about G. Edward Griffin. I read his books. I read Debunking 9/11. I went to the government sources, which I had been indoctrinated with from the news at that time, so I knew the government story, but I did not want to present this to someone and look like a fool. So I really, really studied. I had my facts and everything down before I started talking to any other officers in my office at that time, which was the Rancho Cucamonga office in California. I was still an officer there. And so prior to that, Andy, I really worked hard. I wanted to say, no, it cannot be true. I had to disprove Alex Jones, but there was no disproving it. I would wake up at night sweating, being so upset at the fact that someone was pulling the wool over the Americans' eyes. It really upset me. But once, it took me about, 4, 5, 6 months before I even approached another officer about it. And even that I had to do very gingerly, because I was saying, wait a minute, now I might be a tinfoil hat conspiracy nut if I say this, So, but it took me about 6 months before I came out of the closet on that.
What was the reaction of your colleagues when you started talking about this?
It depended on the intellect. There was this one guy at Rancho Cucamonga who was really sharp. And as soon as I told him, right away, this officer, he got it. Whoa. But I knew he was sharp. And he said, well, yeah, of course buildings don't fall like that. That's cartoon-like. But some of them who were not the sharpest pencil in the stack, right away dismissed me, which was all right. I knew I was going to come across people like that. But they respected me because I was a cop's cop. And even right now, I still get calls from cops that I knew in California because they respect my opinion on things. I was one of those cops that I've received probably 4 Officer of the Year awards. I even received one as a sergeant, which is highly unusual for a sergeant to get an Officer of the Year award, but they gave it to me because I displayed a lot of courage in the field, and I did things that, cops thought were, hey, that's great, John, you got the job done, So a lot of cops, they didn't dismiss me right out of hand, but they would, I don't know, I drank the Kool-Aid, and I can't believe our government would do something so dastardly, so, over the top. And I tried to explain to them that, no, that's not really our government. It's a criminal element that took control. Our government is the one that, I'm a veteran, and I came out of the Army, and that's not what we were fighting for. These are criminals that have taken control of our government. So I lost sight of your question. Sometimes I get emotional talking about it, especially the genesis of my awakening, because when you wake up to what's going on, you delve into it so deeply because you want to disprove it. You say, no, this is America, red, white, and blue, mom's apple pie, and all the people that died for it. You're going to tell me that we killed our own people? No, it's not we. It was criminals that did it. Criminals within our government that we let take control.
Absolutely. Now, you also told me when we were talking the other night that you had an interesting conversation with a commanding officer, at your police station. You want to talk about that?
Oh yeah, sure. That was actually, he wasn't a commanding officer. He was part of command structure. He was a lieutenant. I won't give his last name, but his name is Mark, and he came to the office probably 2 years after I got to Rancho, and my locker was festooned with all types of 9/11 inside job. And that's my right. As even a police officer, I have a political right to express my political views. And I expressed it on my locker, trying to wake up officers. You pass my locker, and nobody defaced my locker because they knew that belonged to John Meaders, and he's a badass. He's a good guy, and I didn't take any gruff from anybody. But it got to the lieutenant. I've even seen sergeants come into the officer's locker room to look at John Meaders' locker to see all the stuff I had. I didn't like George Bush, and 9/11 was an inside job. What about Building 7? And stuff like this. Try to get people to wake up. But one day, lieutenant, we'll just call him Mark, he arranges an interview with me, and he made it sure that I knew this was not work related. This was something we were going to have off the job place at a local restaurant, hamburger joint, and he wanted me to meet his buddy who was a PhD in engineering. He knew I had an engineering background. I had 3 years at San Diego State. I was going to be an electrical engineer. And so the meeting occurred. And right away, he wanted to know my views on what was on my locker, 9/11. So I brought, David Ray Griffin's book and some other books and papers on 9/11 and PNAC documents and all kinds of stuff supporting why I had these views. And I even gave him a copy of Debunking 9/11 Debunking. I let him have it, brand new. Hey, read it. And so his buddy that was there was eating his burger and stuff, and that time I wasn't hungry, so I had nothing to eat, and I'm just talking. But his buddy did not say maybe 5 words during this whole conversation, which took place for about an hour. And right away, when I sat down and his buddy sat down, I said, oh man, this guy's he's an alphabet agency guy right away. I could tell he was some kind of Fed or maybe a infragod or something like that. I knew he wasn't what my lieutenant was saying. So we went on, and what the strangest thing about this whole meeting was, Andy, was that even when I fielded all of his questions, all of my lieutenant's questions about why I felt 9/11 was an inside job, he said, I don't care if our government did do it. It got us in Iraq, and we should be promoting democracy around the world. Some words to that effect. And I was shocked. I said, whoa, what kind of attitude is it? That took me back. Anyway, I'll never forget that meeting with him and his so-called friend who's a PhD in engineering.
Wow, that is amazing. And that's just amazing that somebody in authority has that attitude. But, people say, how do the bad guys, how would they get away with this? Well, a lot of people have that kind of attitude, and that trickles through our entire system. That's amazing. That's the first time I actually heard that element of that story from you. Let's talk about procedure. Let's pretend that you're not retired and you're still on the California Highway Patrol. Okay. And forget about 9/11. Let's just say that I come up to you and say, officer, I have critical information about a bunch of murders that took place back in New York back in 2001. Now, I say that to you as an officer of law out there in California. What are you obligated to do in that scenario?
I'm obligated to investigate myself, put you in touch with someone that can investigate it and will investigate it, and also follow up and make sure that an investigation did take place.
So, I mean, how would you do that? You just you just look. Would you look for somebody in New York in that jurisdiction, or?
Well, procedurally, I would take these steps, Andy. I would look at this person credibility-wise. I mean, after you're a street cop for a while, you understand almost immediately whether someone's what we call a 5150, someone who's a half bubble off, who doesn't have a full stack. And I would determine if this person is actually credible. And at that point, I would look at some of his evidence myself, if he has some with him. But if he doesn't, I would take this guy to someone, either the sheriff's department, because they generally handle all the murder cases, or the police department in that jurisdiction, and put him in contact with a detective or someone who can follow up and go out of state to take a look at this, or at least contact another police agency to start an investigation. And I would make sure that it would follow through. I mean, that would have to be your answer as a street cop. You have to make sure that this is someone is sinking their teeth in it, and it doesn't fall, through a crack in the woodwork or something.
Okay, so it's basically, so even if the murder has been tried and somebody's already gone to jail, but somebody who, let's say they have some credentials to them and has investigated this and they've got new evidence that maybe the went to jail, didn't do it. So you're obligated to follow through on that and make sure that there's some action on this.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, legally you are, yeah.
Legally you are, okay. So now let's rewind here. Let's propose the same exact scenario, but in this case, it's 9/11, which is widely known about by everyone. What changes in this scenario?
Nothing. What changes? No, we have a duty. You're putting me back in the scenario. I'm a beat cop. I am an on-duty cop. I'm not retired. There's really nothing that changes. And I guess that's what bothered me so much when I woke up to it. I said, 3,000 American citizens are dead. We need to do something about it. Andy, I'm going to tell you, I was so upset when I found out that I was right about this, that I used to wake up and think about ways, how do I approach the people I know to get in touch with the authorities in New York to tell them that, hey, this thing is not what it seems to be. I used to go through scenarios in my head. I used to say, well, maybe if I offer in brief, and at that time I was an acting sergeant, and I said, well, maybe I'll offer the officers $100 to disprove what I'm saying. Would that get people to start looking at it or something? I was very perplexed by the whole thing when I found out about it.
I can tell just from the sound of your voice. So just to reiterate, I don't want to keep beating this horse, but let's say, I and Richard Gage walk into the sheriff's office and we say, hey, the guy that went to jail for the crime, or the guy who was accused of the crime may not be responsible, or there's some other element in it. And so they're basically obligated to look into the crime and, like as we say in the letter, to forward it through their proper channels and make sure that this evidence is acted on.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you're dereliction of duty if you don't.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Now, obviously, you woke up on your own just through circumstances and catching something on talk radio. And I'd say that if you did, there's other officers out there who are awake. And I've actually heard them call into talk radio and mention this and other things going on. What would you advise them to do if they're in your position to actively take part in this outreach that we have initiated with the reaching out to the police? Is there anything they can do from their position that the rest of us citizens can't do?
Andy, I would say to completely inform yourself, inform those around you. At one point, Andy, we were having an inspection at my office in Rancho, and the commissioner of the Highway Patrol was going to be there, and he did arrive. I thought I was envisioning when he shook my hand, which they come around, they shake your hand, and the commissioner knew me at the time. I was going to, when he shook my hand, stop him and tell him, did you know 9/11 was an inside job? I was contemplating doing that. So I don't know if you should go that far, but I didn't do it. I didn't have enough courage. I couldn't get it up, courage-wise, to tell him that which I was contemplating doing. I don't know, just keep on informing people. Let it become common knowledge within your organization so that everybody in that organization knows. I know it's spreading throughout the California Highway Patrol. I have a lot of members that I know who know 9/11 was an inside job now. And so I should be telling them this information, but I don't, because they know that they have to do it anyway. That they know they have to tell other officers, the young officers, hey, 9/11 is an inside job. I don't know if that really answered your question. I got sidetracked there. Sorry.
Oh, it does, because, what I'm getting from what you're saying is that you're telling them to at least be aware. And, the funny thing is about this situation that we're currently in, I don't think that there's been anybody in history, even the history of any country. I know there's been false flags before, but I don't think, just on this scale and this magnitude, there's been anybody who's ever been put in this kind of position where you have this lie being so closely guarded, and then you're supposed to be enforcing law and order, but the people above you are not doing that, and now you're suspicious that they're active participants in a major crime of this nature. I mean, nobody really knows what to do. We're kind of writing the rule book as we go along, but what I'm getting from what you're saying is that you're telling your fellow officers to at least be informed of this. And I guess that goes back to what I was saying about planting seeds to the audience. As you plant the seeds in their mind, then who knows, whatever happens in the future, at least this is in their mind, and that will make them better informed to deal with whatever future things happen, future attacks happen. But also, too, in my opinion, and maybe this is just speculation, but I think it scares off the bad guys from trying something when they know that there's this mass awakening taking place and that they can't pull off the same crimes that they did before. The old tricks are not going to work because we here, John Meaders, Andy Steele, Richard Gage, all the folks at AE 9/11 Truth are doing their job of sounding the alarm. And so
yes, exactly. It's like the underwear bomber. And I don't know if you know, the attorneys that were on the flight at the time, they witnessed the whole thing, and immediately, because they were aware of the term false flag, it was in their lexicon. So they knew something was up. And sure enough, they exposed it, and they brought it to a head really fast. So maybe that's what I'm trying to say. If officers will inform themselves to understand that any kind of training exercise that is being orchestrated by a federal agency, that you need to look at askance. You need to look at sideways. You need to understand there might be something hidden here, because most of these events take place in the guise of some type of training exercise that is put on by some three-letter federal agency in some kind of effort, they say, to protect us. But it really is not. It's just to cloak what their dastardly deeds they're trying to do.
Absolutely. And of course, when we said this on previous episodes to our audience, this show and our guests, we speak for ourselves. AE 9/11 Truth itself just focuses on the science. We're volunteers, but obviously there's major implications involved with the evidence that AE brings. And so you're reflecting that just as I am, and that's, part of my motivation for participating in this project and focusing so heavily on this outreach for all the time that we've been planning this. Now, also, too, what about, okay, so I asked you to talk about, talking to the police officers who are awake, obviously regular citizens who want to take part in this action alert. You've been on both sides of this outreach, one as a police officer, now as a regular citizen, now that you're retired. Using that knowledge, how would you advise concerned citizens to proceed with this action alert in the most effective way that they can?
Just the way that you were explaining in the beginning of the program, and which is what I'm doing right now. I taking the facts, and I'm going to go to the sheriff's department next. But you go to your local police department with the facts and present it to them. Present yourself very professionally at the front desk and hand them the facts. Tell them what it's about. Identify yourself and be as pleasant as possible, because if you're at all contrary or contentious, you will get it back. So that's why I say be overly friendly and just give it out. Inform people. Talk to people. I talk to people all the time about 9/11. And I let them know where I'm coming from, and let them know I've had 30 years experience as a police officer, And I've never seen the evidence so glaring, then you need to look at it.
Absolutely, I agree, and I say this to the audience: when you go in, wear a tie. I mean, don't wear a 9/11 was an inside job shirt and be unprofessional. It's very important to be professional because again, AE 9/11 Truth, the volunteers here, we are doing the job of restoring America, of doing the real investigation that our hijacked government is not doing. Okay, and so we need to present that. We need to give that image of that we are the authorities here. We are the authorities on what we're talking about. I don't mean authorities over the police, but over authorities on the subject matter, and show them that this is not just some fringe movement on the internet. I mean, this is real. This evidence is real. It's not going away just because people want it to, and we need to stand up and be the leaders that we know we can be deep down inside ourselves. So, if you need a haircut, I would advise you to go get it. I mean, I don't want to discourage people from doing things by putting all these stipulations. That's not the point. But present yourself as professionally as possible because it's like a job interview. And unfortunately, that's just the situation we're in. I once had a friend who was in the military describing the difference between a problem and a situation. A problem is something you can do. Is something you can do something about. For instance, there's a bridge or a rock in your way, you can blow the rock up. But if there's a guard tower and somebody's going to see you come in as you're parachuting into some place, that's a situation. You can't do anything about it. If there's a hurricane as you're trying to do some attack, you can't do anything about the hurricane. Okay? So the situation is, we have to step up and we have to conduct ourselves as leaders and as professionals, and we have to remember that the police are not our enemies. All right, and that's a big tragedy that I've seen in this post 9/11 world with people that protest the war or people that the protest for 9/11 Truth is some of them. Maybe even a lot of them just look at the police as representing the man, but the police are people too. You're hearing a member of law enforcement or former member of law enforcement right now. These are people too, people who may be awake and they're doing a job and they find themselves in a very precarious position. So we need to reach out to them and we need to get them on our side because that is ultimately what's going to win this thing: is getting police and military on the side of the people, not and away from the people who perpetrated 9/11, the people who are covering it up. Now, John, what about police unions? I know there's been suggestions of reaching out to them. What effect do you think that could yield? Do you think that would be a good source to reach out to as well as police chiefs and sheriffs?
I think that would be a good source to disseminate information. I think the course that we're taking with the police facts campaign is the best because the unions are just made up of police officers. So it's just informing, getting as much information out there as you can, and realizing that the police officers are just like the general public. Maybe they have more expertise in weapon management, weapon handling, and traffic management and investigations. But they're just like the general public, especially if they only get the information from mainstream media, which I turned that TV off about 5 years ago, and I'm much more informed now because I'm not indoctrinated or programmed. But just understand that they get the information from the same source you do, and so they're just as ill-informed, and it's your job as a citizen to help them out. They're good guys and gals. I'm telling you that, because I would have laid my life on the line for any one of these guys and gals because they're really good people. It's just that they're ill-informed in some areas. And so any way that we could inform them, and the police unions would be another way because you're talking to police officers. And give them the information also, yes.
Absolutely. Now, as well as police officers, what other professions and groups of people do you think we should be reaching out to with efforts like this?
Oh, firefighters. I've talked to, when I was on the job, I used to give 9/11 videos to the firefighters or any emergency service personnel that came to my accident scenes. I would hand them videos. And, that was probably a little illegal. I could have gotten in trouble for doing that on the job because I was actually on the job doing that. But hey, watch this video, man. Give it to them. I think firefighters and ambulance workers, all of these people need to know what happened on 9/11 and that the government story is bogus, completely bogus.
How much of an effect do you think, the fact that there were firefighters? And folks, I remember I was watching 9/11, and there was a firefighter who, they were interviewing him, and the first tower had collapsed, or been, I guess, blown up, actually, what the evidence reveals. But, he saw that, and they were interviewing him. He was going back in to get his fellow firefighters out of there, and you could see that he knew he was going to die if he went back in there. But he was saying it to the newscaster almost as if he knew he was going to die, and he was making the argument to himself, saying, I got fellow officers who might be trapped in there. I have to go back in. I'm paraphrasing, but it was almost like the tone in his voice and the look in his eyes said that, or told me that he was making the argument to himself, that he was scared, but he was still going in, and I think he did die when he went back in. So, getting back to my question, John, obviously police officers and firefighters died. I mean, how much of a obstacle is that fact to getting them to look at the hard forensic evidence that these were actually blown up and that somebody made the decision to bring those buildings down on their brother officers?
It's a big problem because it emotionally charges the conversation immediately. And I've encountered this many times talking to cops and firemen. The first thing they're set up with is that my government wouldn't do that, and you have to deflect that. And tell them that certain criminal elements in your government did this, and they want to deny, and you're trying to explain that denying is not the right course of action. The right course of action is to investigate and please prove me wrong. I would love you to prove me wrong. It would make my year. I mean, I'm in retirement right now, and I'm working harder now in retirement than I was when I was an active duty police officer trying to wake up America to get our country back. Yes, it's an emotional charged subject, and that's why you have to, when you approach it, especially with police officers and firemen and emergency personnel, you have to be very professional about it and don't get sucked into that emotionality, that emotional aspect of it. This is it. Try to be cold, but friendly and empathetic and all the other things that lead to good conversation, and not go engage into an argument with them.
Absolutely, and that's the case as with any type of a person, whether they will be wearing a uniform or have a badge or just be a regular, person that in daily life. We got to remember that we are all Americans. We are all brothers. Even the people that viciously attack us, I say they're victims of the PSYOP as well, and we need to remember that. And I spent the first part of my years in being a 9/11 truth activist, being angry. I'm kind of coming down from that now, and I'm trying to just reorient to make this more unifying, to bring everybody together, even the people who don't want to see this truth, don't want to be a part of it. We just got to remember that they're victims as well. Now, we talk about reaching out to other professions. Folks, we provided a great outline for you to reach out to police officers. We have the law enforcement information page for you to direct people to, and we got the letter from Richard Gage. Now, we will probably be coming up with other letters and other ways to outreach to other professions, but you don't have to wait for us. You are your own leader. If you want, you have the letter from Richard Gage. You can change it slightly to be from you and change it to be from a firefighter and put your own name at the bottom and give it to them as your own outreach. Okay? This is, you can adjust. You can start the outreach on your own. Show us how it's done, and we can move this movement even faster, even further towards achieving justice and ending this nightmare that we're in. And it's funny, you mentioned, John, about being more busy now that you're retired than when you were on the police force. I find that I'm more busy with I call this my non-paying job than my paying, because this is the real job of every American. This is the battle for the heart and soul of the country, and we're all in it together, no matter who you are, where you come from in this nation, or even around the world, okay? Because this is a battle for the world as well. We have to wake people up.
Talking about emotions, when I first got involved with this, Andy, and trying to inform the public, I could not fathom how a fellow American could not see the truth once you explained it to him. And I was, I don't know, probably a little more aggressive than I should be, but I am an alpha dog. I am one of those people that will lead the fight, lead the charge. And I was with the 9/11 group in Rancho Cucamonga area, and I don't know, they looked at me kind of askance, but I was just so upset that when I would talk to people, they wouldn't understand. I said, how can you not understand, what I'm saying to you? So you have to understand that you have to step back when you're trying to explain this to people. I believe Richard Gage has a forum now that they talk about how to approach people on this subject. And that's what you need. You need to school yourself on your emotions and the emotions of the people that you're talking to and step down.
Actually, I should promote that more on the show. AE 9/11 Truth has got some great volunteers who are experts in nonviolent communication and, are always advising on this topic and how to approach people. And they're very nice people themselves, so they can, if there is that forum, I'll see if I can find it and put it up on 911freefall.com for our audience to read for themselves. And you can learn a lot from that, not just about 9/11 truth activism, but for life in general, because it's good, on any subject. I mean, in this subject with 9/11 truth, like I've said before, it's not some obscure scientific principle we're arguing about that we can all just kind of live our lives, without any resolution to. This is something that's the death of nearly 3,000 people, and we're still feeling the ramifications for it. So, I understand, because I'm in this, the feelings of people that get very, nervous and want to, get justice and kind of, digging in. But,
right.
At breath, and we got to just, we got to proceed with directed energy, with putting our energy, not wasting it on anger and lashing out, but on being effective and coming up with the strategies that are going to bring us victory, even sooner.
Yes.
Now, John, with our last few minutes here, if other police officers are listening to you right now, you talked about, to the people who are awake. What about the police officers who may be on the fence, or who may want to avoid this issue, or who don't even care about this issue, who may even say you have a point, but they just can't deal with this right now? What would you have to say to them?
I would tell them that they're wrong, that they need to deal with this issue. Many millions of people have died as a direct result of this. They need to understand that our rights are being taken away daily over the perpetuation of this hoax, this killer hoax on the American people, that you need to address it. I know you may like your sports more than you want to read about 9/11, but just give 9/11 information to research a half an hour of your life a week. And within a month, you'll start seeing results. You'll start seeing what's really going on. And you can't sit up there. Well, I mean, you can. When your child is growing up and say, well, Daddy, Mommy, how did that building fall, Building 7? How come buildings fall like that when they're not hit by planes? And they have an internal structure of steel beams, and you can't give them the official government story. I mean, you're lying to your children. You have to have the courage to stand up. I'm not more courageous than anybody else, but I don't know, you have to get that gut check and understand that our founding fathers, and I may be African American, but they're still my founding fathers. I'm an American. You can take that hyphenation out there. I am an American, and they gave up everything for this country. They gave up their good name, their wealth, everything for this country. We can give up a little time, a half an hour a week, to determine whether I actually have a tinfoil hat on or that you've been listening to lies by the government media. We owe it to our founding fathers to find out the truth.
And as the letter that we sent out to nearly all the police chiefs and sheriffs in America says, in terms of the relevance of 9/11 to events today, please do not dismiss this letter without reviewing the evidence. The American people have experienced a sweeping loss of liberty over this past decade based on the 9/11 official story. All right, and so the Obama administration's fought vigorously to legalize the U.S. military's right to override constitutional police powers and due process of law by making it legal to secretly arrest and detain American citizens without charge and without legal representation. And then it goes on there. But folks, John's absolutely right, and he's a former police officer, and he's at the forefront of this now. All right, he's speaking to police officers out there. Just take a look at the evidence. That's the least we can ask of you, is to take a look at it. And again, check us. Verify it for yourself. But again, this is not some vague scientific concept that we can just go on the rest of our lives without solving. This is the deaths of nearly 3,000 of our countrymen, and it could be the deaths of even more people, too, if we don't keep the post-9/11 world in check, if we don't rein it in and return to normalcy once more. John, I want to thank you for coming on to 9/11 Freefall today.
You're quite welcome, Andy.
Now, folks, remember, you can go to ae911truth.org and you can see our law enforcement information page. You can also see our action alert and print out a copy there to take to your local police chiefs. Please do it. Please do the legwork of reaching out and getting the word out there, sharing the AE911 Truth information with police, share it with your neighbors, share it with the world. Now remember, you can listen to us on No Lies Radio every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. This is Andy Steele saying goodbye, good luck, we'll see you next week.
11 years after 9/11, experts are speaking out about what really destroyed the Twin Towers and Building 7.
They're talking about a single columnar collapse or failure that resulted in a total collapse of the building.
Building number 7 descended in free fall for the first 100 feet, which means that there was absolutely no resistance to the descent whatsoever.
So all of the columns really needed to be severed at the same time.
The symmetry is the smoking gun.
NIST has admitted it went into free fall for 8 stories.
You don't need to be an engineer or an architect to see what happened to those buildings.
Dit is controlled demolition. Zeker weten. Zeker weten.
What I saw, it was a classic implosion. The center of the core, the penthouse area, starts to move first, and then the building follows along with it.
NIST excluded the document from FEMA in Appendix C that documented the evidence of melting steel.
More than 1,500 architects and engineers and 12,000 others, including many scientists, have signed the petition calling for a scientific investigation of the destruction of the Twin Towers and World Trade Center Building 7. The report, issued by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, referred to as NIST, was not valid science.
Go to 911expertspeakout.org.